Hey folks, this is another episode of Innovation, Sports and Life. Today I have a very interesting person, Udit Goenka. He's a serial startup entrepreneur. He's founded three companies starting as early as the age of 18. Currently, he's the CEO and the co-founder of FirstSales.io and of PitchGround, both fabulous SaaS companies. Today we are going to discuss a few things, particularly ideal customer profiling and how he goes about sales in a very positive manner. Udit, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Hemant, for the invite. I really appreciate it and really looking forward to it.
Udit, I've been following your journey on Twitter and to some extent on LinkedIn quite recently. We're both a part of the same program. It's fun the way you go about looking and analyzing at customers, right? How does your process work?
I think that's a great question. So, Hemant, I think before we dive into understanding the process, I think one needs to understand who your customers are, what you're building up, what are you selling, where are you selling, how are you selling, and why are you selling. The why part is extremely important because if you don't understand the why, you would not be able to scale up. And that is the most important thought process when I do any sort of analysis. I look into that, I drive into the data points, and then I derive the data points that helps me to start scaling up. So this is usually how my process is. And that's where I start working on creating a lot of value content for people, because when you can understand why a certain profile or why your customers are buying anything from you in general, not just a product or not just a software, but anything in general, it helps you to understand the deep insights about your customer. And the data is what helps you to start growing. So analyzing the data and understanding the data, I feel, is extremely important for any founder today.
So, what comes first? Do you start with a product, or do you actually start looking at what are the customers' problems and what you should deliver in order to solve those problems?
Very interesting question. So I have a concept known as the three-stage ideation strategy, where before even building up your product, what I say is that focus on your ideation stage as much as possible, because that is where it's not going to cost you anything. Once you start building the product, you are draining out money every single day. You cannot leave a product in mid. You cannot stop a product development in mid, because whatever you have invested is going to go down the drain. So spend as much time on your idea stage, because when you spend more time on the idea stage, you can thoroughly understand what your audience really wants. But more importantly, you start building an audience as well. So I'm a firm believer of this three idea stage strategy, where first stage is going to be an idea stage. Now in this idea stage, what I talk about is reach out to 100 people and ask those 100 people to give you $1 for your final product, but that won't be shipped right away. Now it's just $1, right? But you will still have to put in the same effort to convince someone. It doesn't matter whether someone is paying you $1 or $100 or $1,000. The amount of effort that's required is still the same. You still have to show them the same value proposition. So in this particular strategy, go out there and try to reach out to 100 people in your particular industry, or try out different industries as well, because it's an idea stage. It's not going to cost you anything except for your time. But I think that's something that you'll have to invest in order to understand whether you can even build a product. Now, let's say that after you have reached out to 100 people and about 20 people have given you that $1, that means the chances of success of your startup is 20%. The failure rate is about 80%. And this is where you haven't figured out your core ICP yet. Now focus on that 80% once again. Change your pitch. Try a different use case and see how you can convince that 80% to narrow down further. Now, if you reach to 50%, you now have a 50-50 chance of either succeeding or failing. Now, if you want to be on the safer side, keep iterating your idea and reach to 80%. Now, 80-20 is a very favorable risk for any founder, because if 80% of the people you have convinced to say yes, and actually they have paid you that $1, now here is what's happening. First, it's almost a month or 2 month process. So you have understood and you have tried at least 50 to 70 different pitches across different people, just trying to convince, hey, this product is perfect for you. And that gives you the insights about your users, because when you get on a call or when you start interacting with 100 people, you start collecting various data points when you're finding out your use cases for your product. And based on that, all of those users will give you different talks. Now when you're doing that, record those calls so that you can analyze the data. There are several softwares available to do that at the same time. So use those softwares to analyze different data. And these softwares are very smart enough, because today these softwares can analyze the words where the pain point is coming in. And when you are in pain, you start using words like, I need help, I want to grow. And these are some of the words you have to capture and understand and analyze based on those data, that hey, this is the product I need to build, and here are the top 5 features I need to focus upon first. Rather than building what I want, focus on building what the users want. But then more importantly, your idea should always be derived from your own problem statement. Don't go down and start hunting for problems. So what you basically have to do is, when you're building any product, if you want to build any successful SaaS product, build a product for yourself, and then find out 80 such people out of that 100 people who has a similar problem. And that's when you will be thoroughly passionate about solving that problem, and you'll be able to grow on that problem, and then you'll be able to build on the product. So that's what I call it as a 3 stage, which is like, the first stage is you do the ideation stage, then you build it, and then you grow it. So that's my concept, and I've applied it across multiple companies that we have worked with, and it has always worked out every single time.
That what you describe is very similar to this approach we follow in innovation called as design thinking. They, we have four-stage
This
processes, you have five-stage processes, but they're all overlapping.
so
And the
this so this process is actually derived from design thinking pattern, because I'm a firm believer of that design thinking pattern. But I had to modify that a bit more to make it more suitable for how the SaaS industry would work. So, but the derivation has been from design thinking pattern.
can you tell me a bit more about the adaptation? I'm very curious about that.
So when it comes to sort of building SaaS today, 92% of the SaaS companies fail within the first 3 years. This is a stat as per Lighter Capital, which is one of the biggest debt fund VC in US for SaaS companies. And when I started analyzing more, even before building PitchGround, I started analyzing on these stats, and I saw that the biggest reason why companies fail is because firstly they build a poor product. Second is due to lack of distribution, and third is due to lack of financing. Now the third part is something that we cannot solve at all unless and until you focus on distribution. You focus on distribution, and money gets attracted automatically. Now, when you focus the first problem, which is poor product, you cannot do anything. Just go and build a better product. There is nothing you can do. There's no substitution for it. Now we talk about distribution. Now there are various reasons why people suffer from distribution. The first is no demand. They end up often founders end up thinking that my idea is the next $1 billion idea, without focusing on seeing whether there is a demand for it. So this is where those design thinking pattern adaptation sort of starts coming in, right? The first is the ideation stage. Once you get the ideation stage, validate your idea, spend more time on idea and not on building that, because that's a stepping stone. And I always give an extra abstract of and a context of a building. The taller the building, the deeper you dig the ground, so that the foundation of the building is very strong. Similarly, you have to spend more time on the idea stage. Imagine if you do not plan out your construction of your building the right way, you use the wrong materials, and you just end up building it. You do not plan out the designs properly, the chances of it being failing is a lot higher. So this is why focus on the idea stage as much as possible, because building a software today has become a lot more easier. The second thing that you also have to analyze is the process of growth that you're taking up today, and what gap do you want to fill in, because today you can find a software for pretty much everything that you want. So finding a gap and taking a vertical ICP approach is extremely important. If you're not going to take that approach, the chances of you again failing is very high, because any founder that says everyone is my customer, they fall in the 92% category. They are bound to fail, and it's time and time proven. So this is why it's very important to understand and narrow down and build a subset of a particular audience. But the TAM, which is your total serviceable market, right, should still be large enough where you have ample amount of growth opportunity for the next 1 decade. So this is where the analyzation needs to be very important. While you have your idea stage cleared out, it's also important that the industry is big enough. Unless until you're happy making three, four, $5,000 per month and you want to enjoy your life, then that's a very different thing. But if you're looking to build like a multi-million-dollar company, the market needs to be big enough. So that's where once you have enough people interested, see how many of such people can you excite. I have also recommended a lot of founders to run ads during the idea stage itself and see if people come in and fill in the forms, because people who are in pain will give you all the information, because they just want to resolve their problem at all costs. They don't care about cost at that stage. They just are in a need to solve a problem. So this is where, for example, when someone is sick, they don't go and bargain when they sit in a cab or in a rickshaw. They don't bargain. They just want to reach to the destination. Even if the cost is extremely high at that stage, people go. Now you look at cabs during the evening time, the surcharges are 3x, 3.5x, and people are like, I don't care at this stage, I need to just go. These people are having a huge pain point and they are ready to pay. You need to start finding out such people. And that will only happen if you take the vertical ICP approach, where the total available market, which is the total serviceable market, is large enough so that you have plenty of opportunity to grow in that particular vertical itself. So that's where the adaptation sort of comes in from these stages.
So it's interesting. I think what you've done is you've fast-tracked a lot of the design thinking
Yes.
process, right? It's iterative, but you've just
Yes.
compressed it and you're bringing the testing and validation part pretty much in every stage.
Correct.
Uh, so now let's talk about, let's say, this ideal customer profile. I guess when you started off, you said, okay, let's say it's a problem which you are facing, and you find, as a hypothetical example, 80 other people who are facing a similar problem. Now, how do you take you and convert that into this ideal customer profile, right? Because, like, do you solve for yourself or do you solve for the masses out there?
So again, whenever you're building any SaaS, first it needs to solve your own problem. Because if you just figure out some idea and work on it, while there might be users out there, you will not be very excited because you personally cannot associate with, and the founders need to be extremely passionate about solving that particular problem. Any company that is out there has purely grown because of the passion that the founder has for solving that particular idea. So that is something that's very important. Now I'll take an example of firstsales.io, which was launched very recently. It's a sales software. So now for first sales, um, again, everyone can be our customers, right? But that wasn't our focus. We wanted to start narrowing down to a vertical ICP approach, because vertical ICP is something that not a lot of people talk about. People just talk about ICP, but then they don't talk about taking a vertical approach and sticking to that vertical approach for a long time before growing horizontally. But your horizontal growth should be vertical growth as well. So
Can I interrupt you?
yeah,
Can you define what ICP is?
so
So
ICP.
we get, so then we understand better what the vertical and horizontal parts mean.
Sure. So ICP stands for Ideal Customer Profiling. So it means that how does your ideal customer look like? It can be, let's take an example of someone who has just raised Series A, for an example. They now have a budget and they are looking for a specific sort of a CRM. Now the budget problem doesn't exist for them. The core problem is growth. So for that, you have a specific product. Now let's say that you are catering to creators and you have video streaming softwares. Now, video streaming softwares, if they approach to companies, they will have a sales cycle of 3 to 6 months for just a video streaming service. because they take a lot of time, and there's a big chance that a corporate might not even have the right person to stream. They'll have to hire someone, they have to train someone, and then they will go ahead and start using it. So that's a huge sales cycle. Now, if you rather focus on creators, now if you start focusing on creators that are more active on a certain platform like YouTube, because YouTube people stream a lot more on YouTube. When you start reaching out to creators on YouTube for such live streaming services, it's very easy sailing. The chances are that they might end up making a sale in 7 to 10 days of window. Now that is extremely important, and this is where you have to figure out that vertical ICP. So a vertical ICP basically means where is your ideal user and how to find similar ideal users, the one that closes the fastest, because cash flow is very important in any kind of business that you're running. So these things are very important when it comes to having a vertical ICP approach.
So now, if I extend that example a bit further, firstly, I fundamentally agree with you that a true empathy comes when you feel that pain yourself, right? So if you feel it, then you're going to solve it not only for you but for everyone else. But if I'm not, let's say, a Series A funded startup, like I might just be starting out as a solopreneur, can I really solve it for that Series A startup?
No, definitely you can. So I'll again take an example of Versus itself, right? So for us, what we had niched down is that we had taken our vertical ICP approach towards just targeting lead generation companies. Now, if we focus on just lead generation companies, the way a lead generation company makes revenue is via two main models. First is they spend money on performance marketing. Second, they do cold emails. But now, even in these agencies, performance marketing agencies are usually separated, and the lead generation agencies using cold emails are separated. Now, what we have done is that we have narrowed down from an agency to digital marketing agency, from digital marketing agency to this lead generation agency, from lead generation agency to cold email lead generation agencies. Now, this audience itself is very large. Now, the reason why we picked up this particular vertical ICP is because we don't have to explain them why do they need first sales. We have to explain them how is first sales different than the competition and how it can improve their lead flow further. Now, when you pitch on not on why they should buy your software, why they should be using the software, but rather how it can benefit them as compared to other competitors, it helps you to start scaling up rapidly. And this is where your closure rate will go up from 30-40% to over 95%, which means when you get on a call, you ensure you close them because you are talking about the pain points that these people already have. And at the same time, you start building up use cases, PDFs, contents, everything around them. So you're supporting them and telling them, look, we're not just stopping here. You're not just buying a software. We're also giving you the right resources to further scale up. Plus, we understand this industry better. So if you need to further scale up, just reach out to us and we'll give you that value that you require in order to scale up. Because ultimately, people often forget that the S at the end of SaaS stands for service. And that is so important. And many a times these SaaS companies forget that. They focus so much on the first S that they forget on focusing on the last S. And without focusing on that last S, you cannot be a SaaS provider. You cannot be a SaaS company.
I mean, that's so deep, man. Because you're literally building a loop. Not only you're resonating with the pain point of the customer. I mean, that's why they understand the why, right? You don't have to
Right.
convince on them.
Absolutely.
And then once they feel that you're they, they have confidence in you for the how part, that turns into repeat iterations, right? Where they will tell you, hey, this is my pain point. Can you solve
Correct.
it?
Correct. And that's when you take those feedbacks. And if you don't have the solutions, you can keep building the solutions because ultimately the ICP that's closing the fastest, the problem statement for horizontal ICP still remains the same. But the closing sales cycle is almost 5 to 10x larger than your vertical ICP. So this is why when you see when I keep posting these screenshots and everything about the stats, and people are stunned, how are you able to grow so quickly? What is that special X factor that you're providing and doing? And I keep telling them I'm not doing anything special. I just know who my customers are. I know the pain point, and I just talk about those pain points. That's it.
I think you know where to dig for the oil.
Exactly. Exactly.
Very cool. So I want to now change gears and move into, I guess, your sales process, or rather the closing process, however you define it. Because I follow you on Twitter and LinkedIn and elsewhere, and you don't come out as someone who's very salesy, and yet you have these amazing sales results. So how does your process work?
So for me, I think the most important part is always focusing on the value prop, which is education. So our firm, our company has a very clear mission, is to make education free for everyone. So now education just doesn't mean K plus 12, right? It also means there are different parts of industries where people need to get educated. People don't often get results. That's just because of lack of education. So if someone ends up saying this channel is not working for me, it just means that they don't know how to utilize that channel in the most effective manner. So, and me coming from a typical open source industry, I've learned everything from the internet. So this is why always have this mission, and I believe that um, you shouldn't be selling education. You should be selling a product and service. Let people know about it, and that's what I do. So my content always resolves around awareness on that particular subject. And then what I do is I back it up with data, because no one will question you when you talk about data, because you can simply Google and get the data. You cannot lie about it, because people are smart enough to just click on it and put it on Google. And when they see other people, other big research companies have given out these stats, it makes it more believable at that stage. So this is why you create an awareness and then back it up with data. And that's how you make the contents very interesting for people to relate and understand to. So for example, just in the earlier conversation, I told you about the 92% failure rate. And I also gave you who gave that data. It wasn't me. It's a very large company that's giving
Right.
this data. So that backs up, and that's my thought process behind putting up these contents. And that is what helps a lot of people to connect and relate to me, because they're not only understanding how the problem is being solved, but they also understand that the deep dive data. Now, I just don't talk about the data that is available outside, but I also talk about the data in my thought process, and I pull it up very openly and publicly. Look, this is what I have done to achieve results. This might not work for you, but if you don't try, you wouldn't know. At least with this thought process, you can give it a try, and at least try to implement that entire process on your process. Because if something has worked for me, there is a good possibility it will work for you. And that is something that gives you a very clear playbook that, hey, this is what is being shared. Let's try this exactly the same. So when you give it a try, and as a marketing or any company in general, whenever you do any sort of marketing and sales, you have to be very experimental. You have to try everything out. You have to try everything out to figure out what is really working for you, and then start scaling up on that. So that's my thought process usually behind when I put up contents on the internet.
So do you think the whole idea of building in public, of being sharing in public, is also helping your sales?
Oh, it does. So it doesn't affect your sales directly, but it does impact your sales indirectly. So for example, that many of the users that I might have, they might not be a direct buyer or a direct customer. But what happens is that because I've provided them with so much value, so much information for free that even $1,000, $2,000 paid course doesn't have, they start talking about me. And if there is a potential prospect who is having a problem and posting it on social media, people just go and tag me and say, hey, this just buy this from Udit. So that helps. So that's what I'm saying. It's an indirect effort and indirect impact that it makes. Not a direct impact, but that indirect impact is much more powerful, because That indirect impact is what we call as word of mouth marketing.
Very cool. And how did you figure all this out with it? Because I looked at, let's say, your education background, and these are things that I don't think any college will teach. How did you learn all this? Did you figure it out? Did your teammates, your co-founders, how did all this come about?
So I think most of the things I've learned pretty much from YouTube. Initially, during the initial stages, uh, when I would go to college, I would leave videos to buffer. Um, I still remember using 256 kbps internet, BSNL internet connection. Was crazy days, and the only good part used to be was YouTube would buffer your full video. Now it doesn't, right? So I would leave 4, 5, 6 videos on my tab. I leave my computer open, and then I would go to my college. And by the time I would come back, the videos would have been downloaded, and then I would just watch and sort of learn from them, because that was the only way to get education or get yourself educated from the contents that people in the North America were producing, because US in general is about 15 years ahead than what we are today. So any new sort of technology used to come in, I'm talking about back in those days, it used to first get adopted in North America, and then it used to come out, and at the same time YouTube was also sort of like newest channel. So a lot of creators were coming in and putting up content so that they can build their audience. And that's when I learned. So when you learn something from other people for free, we as human, we feel indebted towards those people. And that's what I started feeling, that I have to just start giving back. And that ultimately ended up becoming my mission, because I always feel that you shouldn't be charging for education. You need to let people know about it, and then sell them services and product. And there is a big chance that when you educate them, they end up buying from you, they end up sticking with you, they end up recommending you. And a lot of good things happens because you took the time to tell them something and inform them over something. Because awareness is the number one reasons why some companies are very successful, some aren't.
Very well said, Udit. I mean, it's amazing how you figured out this process and you're implementing it. It's actually fun to watch your journey grow and grow.
Thank
I
you.
think we can continue this discussion for a whole lot longer, but I think we can save those topics for another discussion.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you for sharing ICP. I think you really provided a lot of golden information here that will be fun to analyze and break it down even into subtopics. So,
Perfect. Pleasure's all mine.
yeah, thank you, Udit, and wish you PitchGround first sales team all the best.
Thank you so much, everyone, for having me. Thank you.
Yeah.